Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're going to be looking at how my ant weights did at ARC's June meet. Now, a couple of quick things to get into before we go straight through into the fights. As always, there will be timestamps to the fights directly in the description, so if you want to skip me talking, you can go down there and just watch the fights as they go through. Second thing, I have obviously been quite busy with BattleBots and BoggleBots in the past little while, and also some sickness in there. I have not had any time for ants at all. So these two went straight in with very little time for me fixing them and improving them or anything. I think about half an hour per robot before going into this competition. Some of the first fights are a little bit interesting because they're not fully up to spec, but that is how it is when you run out of time. So today we have the A League and the 2v2 League. So A League we're running This Is a Party as we normally do, and in the 2v2 League we are continuing to run this guy who at the moment is very beat up. But this is Guesstimate. This is an experimental bot for me at the moment, and this event showed me that this experiment is successful, and you guys are going to get a full video on this guy sometime in the near future because this thing works pretty well. Despite what it looks like, it actually worked a lot better than I was thinking. And yeah, like I said, it was a bit of an experiment and was playing around with some stuff. This is also why A Little Obvious hasn't been fighting, as I've been trying to prove out this design. Anyway, jumping into the first set of fights. So the very first fight is a 2v2. It is with Guesstimate here, and it is against Brunhilde and Forcey. Now, the one thing you need to know about this fight is, for this fight, I put in a PLA printed weapon onto Guesstimate. Now, in a previous fight, I have used an ABS weapon, and this time I'm using a PLA weapon, just because I want to test the viability of printing weapons in an ant weight class or in a full combat ant weight class. So let's take a look at how this goes. So, as it turns out, PLA weapons are a bad idea. The ABS weapon that I printed for this guy held up, survived a fight, no problem. The PLA weapon actually fractured across the print lines, which means that it's an issue with the strength of PLA and not an issue with the strength of 3D printing. It was just a bad idea. So, of course, we drew that fight because, yeah, with the weapon broken and then the rubber coming off the tires, I was a little bit stuck. I was able to kind of drive by vibrating the weapon and running one of the wheels, but I wasn't really all that much help. And then my teammate, who is not Jaden of Raptor Robotics this time, it is Nath, who is a 6-year-old, one of the few young drivers that we have. He really loves kind of dancing around and whacking his hammer into the ground, but thankfully he did manage to hold on in this fight and give us the draw. So I'm not expecting big things out of the 2v2, but that's fine because, like I said, I'm proving out a new robot design here. I'm not in the 2v2 to win it. I'm in the 2v2 to have some fun and to try out the new robot design. So next up we have This Is a Party versus Reaper. Now Reaper, for those of you who watched some of my fight videos before, Reaper is a dustpan style robot that is hugely resilient. I have knocked it around the arena so many times, thrown it up really high, it comes crashing back down, and it just keeps working. So I knew that going in, this one was going to be a tough fight. Oh, and that was tougher than expected. We got really lucky at the end there. So what happened was one of the motors was busted. I think that was shrapnel in the last meet, had damaged that. And I thought I'd tested that, but apparently it just like got caught on a bad gear tooth or something and just stopped in the arena. Thankfully, I did have some spares with me, so I was able to swap that out, but it did mean that I was basically crab walking for a whole fight, which means I never really got the weapon engaged. So I just got really lucky, as I said, that he, overcorrected and went in the pit. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Sometimes you do get lucky, which, whew, thank you. Next up, though, we have the 2v2s again, this time against red and blue simples. And we put an actual weapon blade on this time. I tested the PLA, I knew that enough about that now, so I put a Hardox weapon blade on it. I also glued the rubber onto the wheel so they couldn't get jammed in sideways. So I was expecting a much better fight out of this. So we won! And it was no thanks to me. Nath did all of that on his own, pretty much. I mean, yeah, one of them kind of sacrificed themselves, trying to knock me further into the pit. And the other one, Nath actually got on his own. And I think out of all the times I've seen him fight, that's the first time he's really thought about it and actually gone after an opponent and purposefully knocked them into the pit. So he did really, really well. That's good to see for a young driver like that. He's starting to get the knack of combat, which is a really good thing. And it's also going to mean he's going to be a scary driver in a few years' time. But what happened to me? Because you saw there was a big hit there, and then I kind of parked up against the wall and just stopped. What happened to me was a battery short, a very, very scary thing. And I fried a battery. In actual fact, I fried two. The reason I found out that it was a fried battery was I honestly thought it was just like an overcurrent draw or something. That was a pretty big weapon I had on there. So I thought it was overcurrent draw that had killed the battery. I put a new battery in, turned the robot on, and it kind of powered up, it kind of didn't. And I was like messing with it a little bit, trying to work out what's going on. And then the new battery puffed and smoked. So I finally worked out that it was some wires that were quite close together near a circuit board, had some little dangly bits, and those dangly bits touched and allowed basically the battery to short to itself. So nothing electrically died, but the batteries died, and I lost 2 batteries, which is not good. But I fixed that with some hot glue, so eventually we did manage to get it ready for its next 2v2 fight. Okay, so that was that 2v2 fight. Moving on to the next A-League fight, which is This Is a Party versus Escobar. Now, once again, Escobar is one we haven't seen for a while. Escobar started its life as a shrapnel clone and has kind of gone its own way. It has a really nice a toothed disc weapon, which is really cool and hits really, really hard. But it is a vert versus a horizontal, so all we really know is there's going to be some big hits, but it is anybody's game. So we won, but at what cost? We lost the weapon mount, and that is the first time this has happened. I epoxy these weapon mounts into this chassis, and the epoxy just ripped straight out. It was almost like it had no grip on this ABS at all. So thankfully, some people there had some interesting Loctite super glue that had some work time on it, so I was actually able to get the motor mount back in, and I also filled around the edges of it with with hot glue, not real super glue, because real super glue just doesn't have the work time for this type of work. Yeah, so I managed to get the motor mount back in, which is why it's still here. But yeah, far out. That was a hit and a half, that one. Tearing my motor mount out that's a massive feat. Like, I've never seen that happen before. That was kind of crazy. Yeah, okay, so next up, we are moving over back to the 2v2s. Oh, by the way, I do like the fact that I won that fight, but it was heavy damage for the win on that one. So we're moving back over to the 2v2s, and this time we're up against Sawtooth and Pivot Push. The fun fact here is that Pivot Push is actually driven by the same person as Escobar, so I basically had back-to-back fights against him. And because of the battery issues and stuff, this actually was supposed to be back-to-back, but it got a little bit delayed. And I decided to put a slightly smaller weapon bar on. It's a single tooth design, same length, but it's less weight. So let's see how this goes. So I was an idiot in this fight. The new weapon started working. New weapon was working really well, and then when I ripped off his saw that was kind of like floating around the arena and spinning like a top, I decided that I had to hit it, and that hit rattled the robot enough to turn my switch off. Because at the time the switch was just kind of like sitting in the robot, kind of floating around a little bit, and it didn't turn it all the way off, but it turned it off enough that the whole robot lost power. So that was silly on my part. But then again, if the same fight happened over, I would do it all over again. I couldn't see that saw blade spinning around the arena like a top and not hit it. It was too much fun. And then yes, of course. So from there, it was 2 people or 1-ish people on Nath, and that was going to go that way. Like I said, he's been doing better for this competition, but you know, he is a young driver, so we don't expect big things out of him. But you know, he very soon we will, because he's starting to get there. Because of that, we're going straight back into another 2v2 fight. This time we're doing Reaper and Simple Solution. So Simple Solution is the design that has big brass bars and a brass section at the front, which is designed as a spinner catcher and spinner destroyer. So again, I'm just going to kind of hit this really hard and see if I can break something, either on me or on him, because like I said, I'm proving this design out. Also, I glued the switch up so that it can't jostle itself off again. So that is starting to look like what I want it to look like with this guy. For the first kind of half, maybe 2/3 of that fight, that was going really well for Guestimate. Dishing out some hits, not really dying or anything. The problem was that at that point, I didn't have it set up properly to be able to drive upside down. So I was struggling to drive upside down. I only had one wheel contacting. And with a dustpan robot like Reaper in the arena, that meant I was just pushed into the pit. You know, this is how this type of stuff goes. You need to be able to drive upside down, and that is one of the minor design flaws in this that needs to be changed before we do a video on that, because yeah, big things coming with that guy. So next up we have this is a party. We're going back over to the A's. We're going to the A's, and this is a party versus SlipStream, a robot that was formerly a full aluminium body, and it's now a full core fluke body, which is kind of like corrugated plastic, essentially. So it's like core fluke and duct tape, which is an interesting choice. I think it puts them quite light, like quite far underweight, but They seem to think it's a good idea. Let's take a look. Okay, I take it all back. That was a great idea. I mean, I could not get a bite on that chassis at all. If I nicked the thing with my weapon, it either bent the core fluke a little bit or it ripped some duct tape, and that was it. There was nothing that I could do against that robot. I was getting in underneath their wedge 99% of the time, and I was just kind of nibbling at duct tape and core fluke, and that was it. I mean, it was a frustrating fight on my end, because this weapon is capable of dishing out those big hits, throwing robots around the arena. That's a lightweight robot. I should have been able to throw that thing all over the place. Couldn't get any bite on it. So that's a thing. That's kind of annoying. Yeah, but it's like I said, I take it all back. It's a great design, and it's very resilient, obviously. Okay, so that was that fight. It was disappointing because of all of that, but yeah, now we're going to go back over to the 2v2s, and we're going to do Anty-matter and Tron this time. And this fight is the one that cements guesstimate in my estimation of it, because that was brilliant. There was so much damage dished out by guesstimate in that fight. I did get stuck on something, so there was that point where all three of us were kind of like spinning in our own little circles. I was high-sided on something. There's not a whole lot of room in underneath this robot. So I got high-sided on something. One of them had lost a wheel and the other one had the rubber jammed into the wheel, both of which were done by guesstimate, so that was good. But we're all kind of like spinning around in circles for a little while. So because all three of us were going, the judge didn't count us out. Probably should have been called a draw. It ended up as a draw anyway, because by the time I got fixed, there was not really enough time for me to do anything. And then the big hit happened. So the big hit, that was my bad, actually. The reason why all of this stuff exploded is because I did not Loctite the screws that connect up into the brushless motor, and that is a bad call. Over the last couple of fights, they slowly loosened themselves back out. I didn't tighten them between fights. If I thought about it, I should have done that, because that would have saved them, maybe. But Loctite would have saved them even more. So I did not do that. I didn't check them between fights. I didn't Loctite them, and that's why we lost the weapon motor, is that they just kind of loosened up, and then in a hit, they finally let go, and yeah, the weapon motor just ripped out, basically. It took some of the wall of the robot with it and everything, but that is a really easy thing to fix. That is just a building error on my part. So for the most part, I'm really happy with how guesstimate did. It doesn't really seem like I should be. It got destroyed a lot, it got turned off, but it was a set of proving fights. There are some very minor improvements that need to be made to this thing, and then it will be rock solid, and that is a good thing. Okay, so that was that 2v2 fight, and that was now the final 2v2 fight. We didn't do very well in the 2v2s this month, as you can probably tell, so there is no placing and no trophy for that. However, this is a party is on the verge, right on the verge of going into the A's final. However, this is a party, SlipStream and Reaper are all on the same number of points, and only two of them can move through into the finals. And each robot has beaten one and lost to one. So I lost to SlipStream and won against Reaper, which is really lucky, because otherwise I would be out. And they have done similar things. So we're doing a three-way rumble with three robots to determine who has the places in the finals. So I focused all of my attention on Reaper in this fight because, well, at least while Reaper was still around, I focused all of my attention on Reaper in this fight because I knew that that was the only chance that I had to make it through. The fight with SlipStream earlier had proven that it was very, very difficult to get a hold of him and do anything with him. And then some early shots on his side also proved that I can't get into the sides either. So he's a very, very difficult opponent for me to face, which is really interesting. I don't know how I'm going to fix that. I might have to run some form of alternate setup for someone like him because there's just nothing I can do against him at the moment. But that me going after Reaper all the time did mean that I got that one decent shot on the back of him. Normally, when I hit Reaper like that, he kind of falls over and gets back up and keeps going. This time around, I actually peeled the chassis open a little bit, which meant that when he self-righted and got back on his wheels weren't touching the ground anymore, and he got knocked out. Then after that, it was me and SlipStream, and that just went the way it was always going to go. He pushed me around everywhere he liked and put me in the pit. Yep, that's that. Like I said, it's not much else because I can't really do anything against him. So that means we're going through into the semi-finals though. So in the semi-finals, we are versing Anty-matter. Now, those of you who've watched the channel for a while know Anty-matter is This is a party's nemesis. There's been a lot of rivalry going back and forth. He beats me a lot because he's quite low to the ground and he's got a lot of traction and pushing power in that robot. And this time round, he has gone even lower to the ground. He's attached razor blades to the front of his robot, so it basically is the lowest possible thing that can be in that arena. Any lower and you start digging into the arena itself. So this one could be interesting. Boy, that was quick. The one thing you don't want to do as a spinner in an arena with pits is to open those pits early. Yeah, no, that did not go according to plan at all. So what happened there was those magnets, so the pits are held in with magnets. Those magnets had been running all day, so they were hot. And that means that they lose a little bit of their efficiency off them. And then I got a full force shot with my weapon onto the pit door, and that was enough force apparently to overcome that magnet in its weakened state. And so it opened, and then once it was open, it was all over because those new razor blades, I'm telling you, they are the lowest thing to the ground you can possibly get. So yeah, then I need to do something now because both of those two robots, both SlipStream and Anty-matter, are just my absolute weakness. There is nothing I can do against those two robots. I basically have to be in a fight with them and hope that they mess up, and they're both pretty good drivers, so it's highly unlikely that that will happen. So I need to think about this because I think there might need to be some alternate configuration for this as a party, specifically designed to fight wedges, and I don't really know what that looks like at this point in time, but I'll think of something, I'm sure. Speaking of SlipStream though, we're going back into our third fight with him. So having lost the semi-finals, we're no longer in the grand finals, we are in the third place playoff, and that third place playoff just happens to be against SlipStream. And he's beaten me twice this competition. Like, just easily, not even a problem. He's basically had to replace duct tape on himself each time we've fought. So I think we all know which way this one's going. Except we don't. I got lucky. I got lucky again, which, twice in one event. Look, I'll take it for sure. That is a good thing, but I definitely don't count that as anything more than luck. If he hadn't driven himself into the pit, I'm sure it would have been me going down that pit. But it does mean I got 3rd place for the June meet in the A's. So pretty happy about that. But like I said, we definitely need to work on something that is some form of anti-wedge for This Is a Party, because we're having troubles right now. Yeah, anyway, I think I've rambled on for long enough, so I hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and I will see you in the next video.